Hey everyone, it's Matt C. I'm recording this from my car, and if you're listening to this, that means it's worth listening to. I didn't crash or lose my train of thought, trail off into oblivion or something, and this actually worked out. I'm trying to do this because I have a family in town, and it's I'd rather record something without distraction in my car than record something with distraction and my mother-in-law listening to me in the next room, obviously. So yeah, so I've been thinking about something I've been kind of like test piloting, if that sort of makes sense. This idea of community versus industry. These are a lot of words that have been bandied about for the last few years. Pretty recent phenomenon to talk about the comics industry. There's this idea that some people say that it's a community, and I think from their perspective, they're trying to convey the idea that comics is a network of informal relationships. A lot of people who get along, a lot of people who are friends, more than just employees of each other, but care for each other's welfare, and also reach out to people and get business relationships going based on those friendships a lot of times. And they think of this in a positive light, as you might if you use terms like community to describe a comics industry. Negatively, there are critics of this viewpoint, and the criticism goes like this: that if you're calling it a community, what you're really doing is you're masking a kind of a Mean Girls social structure, where the popular kids get to make decisions regardless of whether or not it makes good business sense. But just because there's grudges, or because people are playing favorites and this sort of thing. Obviously, this does happen in every community. And I guess at this point, I should point out that communities are not what the dictionary says they are. There is a very real and valid kind of newspeak kind of terminology as a social media phenomenon. A recent one, maybe 3 years ago, thereabouts. Community does not mean everyone who happens to live in the same space, figuring out how to cohabitate. Which sounds a little closer to an industry. Community does mean people of a like-minded, a coalition of people who are brought together and defined by what makes them the same, not what makes them different. And if you are different, you are excluded from that community. That's not really, I guess that might be closer to a commune than a community. I don't know. So that's the community side, right? And so the industry side, people bring this up a lot, and I think it's I can understand the need, the positive need to not just critique communities, but to provide an alternative definition for what these phenomena are, and talking about the comics industry as an industry as opposed to a community. I get the intention of that, but I think it's intentionally, just like using the standard, opening up a 50-year-old dictionary and pointing to the word community and telling people that they're using it wrong. Just like that is intentionally over-literalizing something in order to suppress the intentions of the person you're arguing against, and it's not really a good faith approach, I think, because it's clearly more than an industry. You can say, and these people are right, I think, just to insert my own opinions here at this point. I think that they're right to be suspicious of social hierarchy networks, and to push the idea that the comics is like an industry, just like the restaurant industry. Just it's not a restaurant community, right? Yeah, that's very, like, it should be an industry in the sense of it should be business minded, business oriented, and it should be putting customers first, just like any other industry. You don't need a special term or hashtag or something to talk about waiters not spitting in your chicken parmesan every time you order it because of how you voted or something like this, right? That's the customer sometimes isn't always right? If they're belligerent and tearing up, if they're beating up your wait staff or something, you can toss them out. But it's just normal standard behavior. You don't need to explain something that is understood in every other industry except comics. And I do appreciate that people are trying to normalize the comic industry and kind of rough out its peculiarities. But I'm not sure in this day and age, with the boutiqueness and frankly the impossibility for anyone other than the amount of people you can count on one hand to really make to really run their own comics investments as a very profitable, healthy, and sustainable business. I don't know. I kind of think at this point we should be looking for a third way. Okay, so this is where my opinions really come in. So it's not an industry. I'm sorry. You might like it to be one, but I think even the people who are talking about this as an industry, just for those of you who tune into Comicsgate type things, people who talk about, I guess it's really your boy Zach of Comics Matter YouTube channel. I think he understands that his opinions and his personality and his selective transparency about his own life is a lot of what sells a relationship with his customer base, and that sounds a lot more like community in the modern sense, or even in the old sense, than it does like an industry. And so there is something peculiar to this industry. Even the people who criticize it, I think, and I think rightfully so, they're circling a phenomenon that has more to do with personality and personal expression and kind of a lot of soft skills, like whether or not your humor is on point, whether or not you can carry a coherent argument and talk, because this is storytelling, right? So storytelling naturally succeeds when it's growing and it's blossoming from a very like a human-centered interaction relationship, or the closest approximation thereof, like YouTube. So speaking of blossoming, so we can finally get into what my thoughts are. So I think the better term is ecosystem, just to spoil that. I think ecosystem's a fantastic way to describe this. So it's not a community. It shouldn't be a community, and in reality, it's not a community in the Newspeak sense. It's not. It's not a like-minded group of people. It's maybe it could be 3% of kind of autocrats making a lot of people afraid, because there's no such thing as a group of people who all agree. There's just a lot of people who disagree and are afraid to express that, or a lot of people who disagree and trust each other in some other dimensional sense. There's another facet to their relationship that allows them to disagree and still get along. That's the only two options that you have in any way you want to define a whole group of people working together. Same goes for industry, obviously, which is what that lingo is trying to get at. But ecosystem is great because that implies that there are some collective networks that are trying to work together, whether through fear or through love or some things. There's these mini networks, right? And then there's a competitive aspect that is being that the industry is trying to get at, but it frankly is more active than industry. Is a very passive term. Ecosystem feels a little more active because we're thinking about organisms fighting competitively, combatively, aggressively, even sometimes for in some sense it can. There are aspects of this where we're talking about limited resources, right? That doesn't always apply in this scenario, but to some extent it does. We're talking about, what is it, like 600 local comic shops left in a country of 340 million. That's a scarce resource. We're talking about 2 crowdfunding platforms of any notoriety, and discussions and disagreements about what is permissible on those 2 platforms, and it seems like it's mostly one thing on either of them that's permissible. So that's a scarcity. That's narrowing the range, but ecosystem, right? So there's one of the things I love about the ecosystem term is that it helps us get at what's the word where the ecumenical is like the social term. It's the relationship where they'll two. I'll figure it out like right as I'm ending this, right? There's relationships between different creatures that they figure out that they're going to both be able to get their own needs met if they work to help the other's need, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the wildebeest with the little egrets on their back, right? The little egrets are getting bugs off the back of, they get a meal, and the wildebeest gets bugs off its back, that sort of thing. Or like the clownfish that lives in sea anemones and gets to eat algae all day or something, or things that get like extra dead stuff that gets killed by the sea anemone or stung by it or something, right? I actually don't know anything about sea anemones or clownfish. I think that's what they're doing. And sea anemone gets someone who lives rent free in the sea anemone, and it just eats, keeps it clean, like that sort of consensual relationship. That's still not the term I'm looking for. Yep, sorry, I said I'd be in a car. And it's I think there's a lot of that going on, and I like to think of the creator and the consumer, backer, supporter. Still not sure what to call that, because I don't think of it as a I don't like this like submissive dominant language between creator and the consumer. So I still don't know what to call that. So I'm trying to get at that with ecosystem, where the consumers are really in charge, as they are in most free markets. Any free market I can think of, the consumer is king in restaurants, right? So they should be here. They shouldn't be buying things out of fear. They shouldn't be buying things out of anything other than, well, I guess they can buy it out of fear if they want. I guess that's still free, I suppose. They can freely buy out of fear. But there's going to be there's a relationship that builds that's like a codependency relationship. There's another way to describe that isn't the word I'm looking for, but also kind of gets at it. I like that because that's kind of what's going on, right? Like, so it's not, there's no management system that can push a particular product against the desires of the consumer. These things, particularly in crowdfunding, these products crop up straight from the grassroots up to the sky, or as high as they're gonna grow, and that's going to be for a number of reasons, right? And that's more than I can get into, because I think a lot of that, very rightfully, understandably, it's a very human thing for people's purchasing decisions, not having solely to do with the product itself in the sense of the book, but also in the product in the sense of the product of that relationship with that creator, right? That's a very human thing. Picture yourself in 13th century Sweden and the relationship you have with the blacksmith, and how he treats you, or the sort of the non-business conversations you have, or the relationships that your families have a serious and legitimate, it's not illegitimate, impact on how you spend your money. I think that's something very healthy. I think thinking of it like a one-dimensional definition of how these transactions happen, and trying to push that in some sense is what calling comics, even crowdfunding comics, an industry, rather than finding a word that captures what it really is and the healthy aspects of it, with something like ecosystem. If you don't want to use ecosystem, I'm using that. But because it's very organic, and there's a lot of dimensions to how these sort of competitive and relationships build between different parties who are passing dollars to each other. It's very squishy and strange and exciting. It really is. Anyone who likes speculators markets, I guess, would find this sort of thing endlessly fascinating, I think, because it's so much more than numbers. It's really understanding, being fluent in kind of relational dynamics, which is cool. It looks like I'm not going to be able to come up with that term. So you've probably been yelling at me this whole time what the term is. So I'll probably just put it in the title. But so that's kind of my thought. There's going to be little groups of competing, like little micro community, like kind of these little dualistic relational structures between creators and their backers. They're the people who want to see them get funded, and that sort of dynamic, which is bigger than just the two of them. It's this weird third creature that can push them to outcompete others for time and attention and resources. It can push them to build bridges with other little micro networks and work out even higher orders of structural two-way kind of ecumenical business building. And I think that's it. I might have to do more of these because I think there's something here, and I'd really like to know what your thoughts are. Can I just say this one last thing? One of the great things about the this term, this ecosystem term, is that it implies that there's an evolutionary component, right? So The creator doesn't stay the same over time. The creator learns how to evolve to better fit its niche and better succeed within its niche in the ecosystem, and so do the backers. And the relationship that the backers and the creators have to each other also evolves, right? So that sort of expectation and reward relationship that goes both ways, that kind of two-way street improves over time, or it collapses from failed attempts, from kind of evolutionary dead ends, which is healthy for it's kind of hard to get at what is good about that in a industry sense. It sounds only negative in a community sense, but you can see that there's a greater good in the ecosystem sense when bad campaigns fail, or some sort of broken aspect to the backer creator relationship rightfully crumbles. Which usually that's a trust relationship, so that has to do with a breakdown of trust. Those things should fail, though it's sad for that. We're talking about an evolutionary branch that dies off. We're also getting at the health of the ecosystem as a whole, where there's not resources being driven into a cul-de-sac. So at that point, I'm breaking down, like I'm losing the metaphor, and I'm talking about cul-de-sacs because I'm driving. So let me know what you think about this. I think there's something here. This is a Patreon video created. I've been working on this, trying to think through this as a result of Patreon support. That's why I'm making these, so you can patrons can request a video, and that's what this is. So I'd be interested. Anyone, this is Patreon request video, but it's open to the public, and obviously I want to know if you have any thoughts on this. I want to hear them. So let me know what you think. I almost did this like a whiteboard type situation. I almost did it like 11 o'clock at night when everyone else was asleep in my home, and it wouldn't have been as interesting, I think. It would have just been me scribbling stuff that looked confusing and talking in a tired manner. So this is much better. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.